Welcome, everybody. Here's our first panel. The title of the first panel is Teenage Years of the VMware Ecosystem. We don't really know what that means, so we're going to explore that for the next 35 minutes. The thesis statement from the blog that we were given is discuss how the industry matures and how technology ecosystems and communities are affected when vendors mature or move from innovations to sustaining. So in other words, we are VMware founded in, what, 99, right? 2017, it's been a while. Some of us have been around this ecosystem for 10 or more years. Let's explore that. Let's explore this as we are a representative of the VMware community gathered here. And so we're going to explore a little bit of that and just how and what we as individuals are doing with our careers and our lives and how we're going to keep up. I'd like to introduce the panel. My name is John Troyer. If folks don't know me, ask somebody else. Right now, we don't have time. You know, Tech Reckoning is one outfit that we have, and then we also run Marketing Council, and we have a bunch of brands that come together and talk about this very problem of like how do companies work with their community. So I'm going to hand it on.
My name's Steve Beaver. I've been involved with the community since around 2004. Yeah, that works. And this week I'm independent and usually work for a small entertainment company in Florida nobody's ever heard of.
Chris Colotti, work for Tintry currently. Previously to that, VMware for just about a decade. Been involved in the community for a while. I can't do math this morning.
Cody Bunch, Rackspace 10 years now, and more or less involved.
I have been part of the VMware community since 2010 when I went to go work for VMware.
Josh Coen, I work for a national integrator series. I just want to thank, I don't know if it was Jim or whomever set this up. I peaked my height at like second grade, and you guys have really made me feel tall again. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's set the stage here. We're talking about VMware, its ecosystem. We're 18 years in. The first question presupposes that VMware has kind of now moved from an innovative company to kind of a sustaining as whatever. Is that true? Like, so first of all, like, what the heck is VMware in 2017? What thing does it sell? Like, if you had to describe them in one sentence, and is that something that's interesting or boring? Like, I don't even know the role of VMware now, given. Well, let's just start there. Like, what does it sell? What role does it play in the ecosystem? How important is it? Still the center of this thing? Big question. Let's just start.
I believe they sell virtualization software. Well, so I mean licenses. I'll say it for our purposes, but I mean they are in sustainment mode for the most part. They're trying to innovate with VMware OS. I think that with NSX and automation headed. But yeah, I agree. By and large.
Take it a step further. Less of a sustainment and more of a partner building. They're trying to grow their ecosystem. I'll consider them, as far as the corporate goes and the private cloud, that's kind of their main thing. For them to make it into other areas, I think the future for them is being the middleware between all the different other public clouds, from Amazon to Microsoft to Google.
Yeah, because they have now gotten their software in the average infrastructure. It's hard to find an infrastructure that doesn't have some type of virtualization and VMware as part of that ecosystem. So now, the next step is to figure out how to expand that, how to be a part of it. You know, as people make private and public cloud part of their staple, how do they play a role in that? So it's now time. College, graduate school,
Yeah, smirking over here. So I actually had this conversation last year, a while back, when I was at VMware with another coworker. And one of the things we were talking about was what was the last thing that VMware was really innovative with. And I always ask this poll in different groups, who's been around since 2.5, 3.5, when things like vMotion came around, and we all were just shocked, right? That was the most innovative thing we all saw, that we could move machines back and forth. That was a really fun time, right? But I've struggled with even what has been that innovative since. There's been a lot of acquisitions. There's been other stuff that they've bought, integrated. But what really has been developed, inside, and there's, I agree that they're in sustain mode because of that. But I think there's a lot of companies trying to figure out what the next innovation is. I actually personally, I'm not sure how innovative vSphere on AWS is. It's still vSphere on somebody else's hardware. Right? So yes, it's in the cloud and it's public cloud. Start extending those and being able to move things back and forth, you got some innovation. But just the concept of that stack in another data center, I'm not convinced that that's an innovation so much.
Right, that just goes back to expanding what they've ensured.
Well, and that's basically what I've been doing with VMware product since, 09. So running VMware in somebody else's data center is, it's tried and true, but not something necessarily innovative. It may be a new way, it may be innovative business model wise, but it also feels like the partnership with AWS feels a little reactionary. Like we might be losing ground too, so maybe we should partner with.
Interesting. Well, that's some interesting observation. So I'm hearing kind of we're the glue, or I'm still we are the glue that keeps everything together. You talked about innovation internal versus external. I'd actually argue that as a bigger company, it's a natural for innovation to occur in an external entity, a startup that then gets absorbed. That's just kind of the way this economy works. So it doesn't all have to be invented inside VMware. But okay, so VMware, so the innovative part of VMware is actually running VMware in the cloud or in other people's data centers, at least this year. That's a piece of it. You had to have things like NSX and things like that to do it well. You could do it before, right? You put up a pipe and secure it and do it. So, so the old guard, right, was like, if you looked at the giants of the last generation, right, that was IBM, that was Oracle, Microsoft, right, huge, dominant companies, maybe looked at a little old-fashioned, although, like, the new innovative companies are Facebook, Google, but Google Cloud, AWS, big, we'll talk about them, and Microsoft, right? Those are three big kind of mega hyperscalers now. And so let's just stick on this one more. Is the role of VMware to be, have they been left behind by these hyperscalers now? Is that the sole role? And then we'll kind of move over to where our developers on that. But anyway, is that what we do now? Is that what this crowd does? Is we're the IT guys that set you up in somebody's cloud? You're on-prem, aren't you?
Let's take it at, lost that thought.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question. Yeah, I don't know that it's VMware's job to stand things up in the cloud, so to speak. It's everybody wants to say they're a cloud company. It's just the mainstream right now, and I think what we saw with vCloud Air and that trying to go in a direction, I actually think the VMware and AWS was sort of a pivot from that, so that we weren't building their own data centers. I'm not sure if it's their job to build in the cloud. Oh, you found it?
Found it. It's back. VMware looked at a way to go head-to-head with Microsoft when they were coming up, and AWS was well established. So if they were looking for a path to be able to compete head-to-head, I think they realized that that was not going to be financially or economically something to do for the future. So if you can't beat them, join them. And I think that's gotten where the stage of VMware is now.
A lot of co-opetition. Microsoft doing the same thing. Well, let's pivot a little bit. Let's maybe examine this via the lens of ourselves. There are a lot of people who joined this community or who started with VMware. Like I said, 10 years ago, right? I started with VMware in 2005, and there were already people here that I know. And then over the years, it grew. So that was kind of the growth mode here, right? So the people who are still here, how have your skills changed from 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to today? Like that's one indication of where the community is. Here,
Okay. You're right in front of the monitor here.
I think Cody.
Oh, it's me.
Okay.
Anyway, so it's just me. I'm magnetic.
Okay. I was going to say something, but he can say something first.
So anyway, the point is, so skills. Like people here
Wanna say something
today
first?
who've been here for 10 years, how have
Okay.
your skills changed over that decade?
So I know for me, my skills drastically changed when I went from Sun Microsystems to VMware. But to go from VMware beyond, one thing that I noticed is that when they brought innovation for virtualization, they also brought innovation for how infrastructures are designed and optimized. And so I know from my career, instead of looking at the single server, single storage system to a whole infrastructure, now when I do my performance analysis, it's based on the whole infrastructure. I'm looking at thousands of virtual machines. I'm looking at them in the cloud. I'm looking at them on-prem as a whole. And I'm looking at thousands and thousands of actions that have to be done every second in order to optimize this infrastructure, which is very different than got started with VMware. And I'm looking at maybe 25 to 1,000 machines.
I think for me, my career's changed from a lot through the community. So I started out as a system administrator, but as I've gone through my IT career, I actually hated public speaking. That was one of my challenges to myself. So getting out.
I still hate it.
What? Shut up, Mike. Nobody likes you. Yeah. No, but and Mike knows this story, right? In all seriousness, the first time I ever did a presentation was at an IBM conference as a system administrator on a VMware project that was done on 2.5, and I threw up 3 times before I actually had to do the presentation. And I think careers grow differently. My career's grown technically, but it's also grown in soft skills. It's grown. I was never a blogger. Duncan was one of the people who actually sat me down and taught me, how to get into blogging and get around to it. I was never on Twitter for a long time. So I think we all change differently, and I know a lot of guys in this room, people in this room have gone completely different routes. They've gone down management routes versus technical routes. So, and I do think that's what VMware did for me. I mean, I started in a small lab in my condo learning GSX and ESX and actually worked my way into being an administrator. I sold myself to the VP at the time and said, this is something that we can put in. So that's how it's changed my career.
So the question was about skills and progression and
yeah, I mean, my point was, like, in 2005, if I'd have asked people to raise their hands and say, who's on the server team, half the people would have raised their hands, and then I would have said, who's on the Windows team, and the other half the people would have raised their hands. But not today, I don't think. Like the org has changed, things like that have changed. So
yeah, so in terms of like hands on the keyboard skills, I do a lot less PowerShell now and a lot more Python, right? A lot more YAML. Both of these are white space delimited, and that really bothers me for some reason. But in terms of soft skills, it's been much the same story. And then I'm going to point to Tom, to Al, to Chris, to Damien, getting involved in the community. Like when your laptop blew up, we sprinted down the road to the Apple Store, and suddenly we're here on this stage. So that's what the last 10 years were like.
If you look at 2005 when I started and where I am today, basically I've automated myself out of a job. And I think that's kind of the direction things are going.
You have to, because the robots are coming for all of us. Hey, so from the folks, so any particular thoughts that somebody wants to share or questions about kind of the ecosystem or your skills or observations on the last 10 years and who are the weirdos that are here now versus the weirdos that were here 10 years ago?
Did someone say weirdo? I mean, taking it back to the beginning of what we were discussing about where VMworld is. Okay, I'll lean this way. All right. What's wrong with boring? What's wrong with sustaining? I mean, there is, if anything, we're talking about 2 different sides of what VMworld has. I'm coming at this right now from the perspective of a solution engineer. I talk with, several different customers from several different backgrounds across all sorts of industries about what they want, what they need. Sometimes it's cloud, sometimes it's public cloud, private cloud. VMware loves to talk about their laggards. I mean, we've all seen a presentation at some point or another. VMware at this point is at the laggard stage. There's so many companies out there right now that are finally waking up going, what year is it? Oh, I need to get on something virtualized. And they're not even thinking about cloud yet. They're not ready to make that push yet. But to have that chance right now where VMware could be that foundation, to be that first stepping stone that eventually does let them go out into AWS or Azure or Google or whatever the heck else is going to be out there, I don't think that's a horrible strategy.
Has, a show of hands, in the last year, have you or a company you've worked with virtualized the app for the, not virtualized, still has non-virtualized apps and they just kind of started to virtualize them this year? Any? Couple people? Couple people. So it's there, yeah. I think that's a good point, right? So is everybody here, do people here consider themselves in IT? Part of the IT industry? Anybody here consider themselves a developer? Couple people? Interesting.
So, John, one thing I'll say on this, I mean, what's wrong with boring? I mean, VMware has to change. I'm focused right now all things cloud, do a lot of AWS. Just the amount of opportunity that's come from January to now versus last year is exponential.
So, and you have a different set, you are working on a different kind of, you're not doing servers, you're not just virtualizing legacy apps, you're doing different stuff, right?
Right, well, I mean, we're really focused on, whether it's they want to, build something cloud native, whether it's doing lift and shift, whether it's re-platform. People want to start exploring these other possibilities because it's not just about where the workload's running, it's about the services they can access based on where that data is at. And if VMware doesn't do something, not only do you have the public cloud to deal with, you also have Nutanix, and if you look at AHV and those numbers year over year, they're growing. So they can't just sit and do nothing.
Yeah, and Red Hat is doing a lot of work with KVM. I mean, there's not a, we are finally at a place where switching hypervisors isn't as scary as it used to be.
Oh yeah, and there's lots of tools out there that allow you to go back and forth and be hypervisor agnostic at a certain level. So, just like what Oracle did, they started out with a database engine, they matured that database engine, but then they built on top of it. They started building middleware and buying companies for middleware. Then they started offering, operation applications. And the reason why Oracle was able to sustain themselves as a major software company for so long is because they built on that mature base. And Oracle, as far as VMware is concerned, it's not so much a matter of changing as it is building on the maturity that they offer today. They have that opportunity.
But and I cannot. Okay, actually, I don't think I knew that. But isn't that what VMware's already doing today, building on top of that maturity?
The question is, are they building on top? Yeah, there's a lot of innovation. There's NSX, EUC.
The APIs, the automation, isn't
APIs, automation, AirWatch.
Yeah, well, they're doing it, but they're making their missteps along the way as they're doing it. So that's the thing that's the yet to see is, are they going to sit and spin in that area, or are they going to actually grow up? And so that's the part that we're trying to figure out is, are they going to ever graduate from college?
I like that analogy. I didn't graduate from college. No, this was always one of my issues I had throughout the years is when you look at what AWS has done. When Bezos came out in 2002 and said, we will have one API. You will code to that API. If you don't code to that API, you're fired. And that was basically what they said. And one of the things that they haven't graduated to, and they haven't gotten out of college yet on VMware specifically, is they don't have a common API. They acquire different companies, and then there's different APIs. So when you got guys like, I can't code my way out of a paper bag. Everybody knows that. But you've now got to learn different APIs. You've got to connect different dots. And I think if they actually would go down and solve that problem first, they would be able to start innovating again themselves or integrating other acquisitions that they're making. But they still haven't solved that problem, and I think that's one of the reasons they haven't graduated college yet, in my opinion.
Wouldn't graduation of college be a point where they want to be the middleware to be in and out? So shouldn't they also be the logic determinator of which platform this workload should go to? Should I send it to AWS? Should I keep it internal? Should it go?
So you're talking about workload placement, which is a big area that a lot of folks want to go to. So, you know, my company, for instance, that's one thing that we do focus on, is that workload placement. And I'll tell you, it is huge, and it's a big opportunity for them if they decide to try to get into that.
So, along the lines of all the things that we've been talking about, the fact that they've gotten comfortable as a hypervisor, which, I mean, there are about 26 services. We talked about the fact that we were all, I mean, I remember cold migration when vMotion came out. I was ecstatic. I threw a party in the office. But truly, they've gotten comfortable in their services, and why not move to something that's cheaper? They haven't defined what their value is as a company, why you should stay on that. I've got resellers that complain because NSX, they can't sell the value of the services because there's so much to do to get it set up. And when we're looking at software-defined services, software-defined softwares, and we're looking at where things belong and how to best do things as an organization, I just don't think they're growing up or graduating from college, or however you want to put it. And what's your idea for, you know, do you think VMware is really looking at that and saying, we need to graduate in the areas we've already moved into, or are they just trying to take everything that they can touch and say, we do all of this?
The latter. Right now, they're doing the latter.
The latter.
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing in all of this is this a pieces, parts, middleware? It's a bunch of stuff that you can use to make your infrastructure, or is it conceptually a unified platform that is the you know, you're saying it's more pieces, parts. We're saying, well, maybe it could be a platform. It could be easy. It better be easier to use, or IT's out of a job. Flippant. Or is it time to open source ESXi? Open source ESXi? Votes? Couple? Yeah, maybe. Well, did you have I was gonna pivot a little. Okay, so you know who's not here, right? Is anybody? Well, the VMware people can stand up and explain themselves if they're here. Well, I don't want to pick on VMware, right? We're here because this is what we bet our careers on, for many of us, right? How many people think I've really bet my career, or in the past or in the future now, on substantially on this company and this set of products? A lot of people, right? I mean, it's a substantial investment in time. In virtualization, in this new style. Well, that's been the last decade, right? Of shift of this new style of putting up apps. But you know who's not here? There are going to be 30,000 people here in a couple months for AWS reInvent. AWS is here. There are 50,000 this year. Well, last year, yeah. So AWS is here, but those people are not here. Those attendees are not here. There's a huge open source. You know, the people is the CNCF here. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation is not here. Kubernetes, they're not here. They're not here. I don't care if AWS is a sponsor. The people that go to the AWS reInvent aren't here. Like very few of them. Very few of them. I'm just saying, developers are not here. Open source people are not here. In the generality. And they're not. And if they're here, they're not in here. Which is, we are the people. We are the holders of the space for VMware. We are the people that we're the most interested. I mean, we are proxies for the people who are the most interested over the last year. I don't know. They disagree. I say there's not very many developers here. There's not very many open source people here. There's not very many people working on AI or ML or VR, or, you know, there's not the super cloud heads. There's no microservices people here.
Because there's licensing fees, and they're astronomical.
Yeah, a different culture. It's a different culture that has emerged.
Now, the flip side to that is it's stable, it's reliable, and it is boring. And so I can go home at night and not get a call at 3 a.m. because KVM decided to have a kernel panic.
Yeah.
Right? And then there is a mature set of tooling around the guys that spend all of their time in ESXi troubleshooting, making sure workloads run. There is no ESXi top for KVM.
Yeah.
Like, there is not a good way to see what memory is ballooning or not.
And I mean, there's one point of view that says if you look at what's going on with Kubernetes, they're basically having to reinvent everything VMware wrote over the last decade anyway, right?
Yeah.
But we'll real quick.
No, I was just gonna say, like, who cares? Like, I don't care. Like, people don't care anymore about the hypervisors. They don't care about the infrastructure. IT for the last 20 years, 20 plus, really 30, 40 years, right? That's everyone, like, they've taken on a role to support the business, and the infrastructure was it, right?
Okay.
The applications were important, but I think the infrastructure was really, the executives took notice, and that's where a lot of the money went. That's not happening today.
Okay. Sean, agree or disagree, or a new point?
Agree in full,
Agree in full.
but also a new point. Kind of to come back to what you said about. Let's see if I can figure out how to use a microphone now. But okay, so you talked to the point about AWS people aren't here, but the point I'd make is we're competing with AWS as infrastructure people because AWS is providing the services, the API. As infrastructure people, we have to build that. So what we're doing with VRA or Cisco's offering, we can't think of the name of it. Yes. What we're doing with those services and building portals and ServiceNow is competing with what AWS does. So we're not going to see the developers who consume the services so much as talk to the people who are building those services to compete with AWS and Azure. And then to the AI point, there's one person who does AI back there, Tony. Hi, Tony. But those are all academics. They're not going to be at an infrastructure conference unless it's NVIDIA, because it's all specialized.
Well, I'll disagree because I think John's point, if I'm following, is the inverse is true though. You go to reInvent, how many people that are here are at reInvent? A lot.
Going to reInvent?
Right. So I think his point is very valid, but the inverse is not true, and I mean that's a metric.
And I mean, talk to people at Facebook or Google or Uber or those companies. They're not academics, and they're working on AI, and they're working on ML, and they're well, sure. Okay, they're a different role, but I'm just saying in the ecosystem, of what is important to the companies and the executives, has the economic, well, that brings us to the next question. Has the economic value shifted? Let's move. We only have a little bit amount of time. Let's pivot a little bit to the community. This is a community. It's been very strong. We've all supported each other. We've had good careers. So, what's the relationship now? If the economic value of at least some of the economic value, right, has moved to another space, and we might even be competing with that space. Although I think that we should be complementing that space. What's the relationship of this community of people to the vendors that are here? And to VMware, what is the role of a vMug in 2017? Is it supposed to be teaching people how to use vSphere, or should it be introducing this set of people to new ways of architecture and new ways of integrating with clouds, which is where we started? So let's pivot a little bit to the community and its relationship to the ecosystem. We'll talk about economic value of the community maybe in a second, because but like, what's the role of the community? What's the role of us in the world?
So I've been like boots on the ground with this, with the brown bags, and we get fewer and fewer asks to update the VMware cert tracks, but we get more and more asks around Docker, around Kubernetes, around Python, around Git, around how to use AWS, around all of these new up and coming players. So maybe like the vBrownBag being your internet vMug, we're being asked to supply more around a more complete view of what's going on in the sphere.
Like an ecosystem, how to integrate, how to come together.
Yeah, like an ecosystem. So instead of just talking about the core products, but talk about the ecosystem around them.
How can I make Amazon work better with VMware? How can I make OpenStack work better all the way around? So I think it needs to expand and get away from Microsoft, Linux lines and start expanding it.
Yeah, because their customer is more mature now. So because they have a more mature customer.
Okay, so that's a big signal, right? We make a lot of my business is working with companies and trying to figure out how to approach communities. And the open source people have different routes to market. They have different communities they're talking with. I'm trying to teach them how to work with the geeks, with the Influence Marketing Council that we do and some stuff like that. We're trying to make people be good citizens. But I don't know if we are we the what's the right metaphor? Are we the Amish? Are we the Amish that are no longer in the mainstream of
microsystems? So I mean, it's a fair point. And I'm not deep into the vMug, but if you, as an attendee, you go to a VMUG or like an all-day event, I mean, the attendance has dwindled, the partners have dwindled. If I'm running the VMUG from a leadership perspective, and I'm not reaching out to the other AWS user groups and the Microsoft user groups to try to come together, that organization is going to be, 2 years tops, I think.
Yeah, I would like to see that too, frankly. I would like to see more, go to an OpenStack meetup in the Bay Area. You know what they talk about? Kubernetes, containers, anything cloud related, right?
So
they're not just talking about OpenStack. Right.
Yeah, so the bottom line is they need to evolve. Yep. They're at a mature point that they need to evolve and expand with the rest of the infrastructure ecosystem.
Final words, like, where do we go from here? What do you do? What do we do?
I was still going to answer that question, but that's okay. No, I think to me the thing we still need in the community is knowledge sharing, mentorship. There's so many other technologies out there that some of us haven't touched, right? So I tell the story. Docker's been talked about for a while. I just started playing with it 4 months ago, at the suggestion of a friend of mine, and he helped walk me through it. He said, all right, this is what you got to do, this is how you got to set it up. So it was also just, I think that's a big part of the community to me, is actually just getting together with people that know something else and learning something from them, and maybe being able to help them through something. I think that's still what we do best. And if we started to bring in those other communities, like the AWS people and the Docker people, we could all learn a tremendous amount to take our careers forward in different ways that we might not have thought possible.
Yeah, so, expand, be inclusive, and I think we can grow with a new community, and I think, we can come together with some of the other communities that are out there, because those other communities are growing, and this one is shrinking a bit because it's mature, and in order to be able to show how virtualization fits in with all these, with the rest of the ecosystem, it needs to be there. We need to have a partnership.
I think the ecosystem needs to match the corporate vision. So if VMware's moving forward to partner with Microsoft, partner with AWS, then the ecosystem and the communities need to expand and come together. A little extension of what you guys had mentioned before.
Final word.
And as you're doing these things, consider either attending or presenting a brown bag or joining your local group in AWS or Microsoft. Who would I be if I didn't pitch the brown bags, right? Like,
yeah.
How many of you are here for that reason? So.
Awesome. Yeah, and do you get good pickup when you do alternate technologies? Like Docker and stuff like that? Do you get good attendance?
Where's my numbers guy?
Good attendance? Yeah.
Is Fraps here? Like, I think we get great attendance on the.
Well, hey, good. Well, and I would say
do we
talking
get
with
good numbers on the non-VMware stuff that we present?
Good numbers, yeah. And look, talking to vendors, including folks like at Google and other places, that crowd, and looking at people who are doing microservices and cloud native, those people need your skills. Those people need ops. Those people need the safe grown-ups because their stuff falls over all the time. Anyway, let's I want to draw us to a close. We're going to keep moving. I want to give the Excellence in Mic Handling Award to Mr. Sean Massey here. Another hand for our panel. Thank you very much. And our next topic will start in Failures Make You Better, starting in just a few minutes. Don't.